Yeah, so tell us about the open source projects one.
Yeah, I
you
put
got
this
here.
together, which is just
I haven't,
basically a list.
I
of
haven't
some-
read it yet, so I'm.
No worries.
Before you move on, though, I
Mhm.
want to say that was a phenomenal presentation. I
Thank you.
mean, that was at the level of, you could be doing a keynote at a big ass conference.
I mean, it was a good first draft, right? Like, yeah, I mean,
A lot of people need to see this across a lot of different industries. This is at the right level.
it's one of those things where I think people could get something out of it. They could understand it. Like, and I try not to be too technical, even when I'm showing the technical stuff, right? Because like it's easy for it to go over your head. I don't know about going on tour and doing all that though.
Show me the money, Dan says.
Oh, there's money there.
I know how to do that. He knows a guy. I know a guy. Connor Canine, Irishman speaks. He knows how to SEO YouTube videos and get all kinds of gigs as a speaker.
Well, if you
What he does
You off
is
the
so
balcony already.
simple. It's so clever how he does it.
well, if he wants to, you know,
I'll teach you all about it. And I'll show you his website. You'll look at it, you'll go, duh.
Duh,
you should invite him to the next one.
yeah, right,
He's wonderful.
Yeah.
You know Connor?
Connor,
You seen Connor Canine speak?
no,
The
I have
Irishman
not,
speaks.
I
He
have
lives
not,
in this- He lives here in the suburbs.
no, I have not
Great
seen
guy.
him speak,
You know?
huh,
I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, it does take time to put some of this stuff together.
Well, I
But
tip the hat.
the this topic is just open source projects I think are interesting. And so you know what else is out there, because there's things that are very much everyone talking about in terms of ChatGPT, large language models like it, like Bard and all that, but not everything else gets talked about. So one of the first ones I thought was interesting is one called Otter, which is considered a multimodal vision language model.
that's not an otter,
No, it's not the transcription
.io,
service where like it's
different one, okay.
it's they named it unfortunately
Worth
something
a box
similar.
to put your iPad.
Yeah.
Right.
So multimodal is this word that just basically means like multiple forms of data, or like basically like language and video in this case. And so like some of these AI models are then going to be starting to get trained on different types of data to then create like something that understands the context and being able to switch between different types of data. And so I think that's worth mentioning, that that's a thing that exists and people call it multimodal, meaning like multiple modes of communication. And this is their video for their, and this is some researchers who made this. And it's just, it's non-commercial, but
One of them,
yeah,
you don't need to ask.
This is like VR screening stuff.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like.
Yeah, but you get the point. I saw that and I
We have no audio, guys.
Go for it. Ooh,
Can you
not
hear me?
both of us.
Yep, now, thank you.
All right, and then one of the example demo videos that they supplied was like the Vision Pro, the Vision Pro commercial, and so I said, hey, what's happening in this video? So it thinks that somebody's wearing a head-mounted display, which I thought pretty close. That it's aware that he's wearing a screen on his face. But the rest is kind of inaccurate with how it described it. I also tried to see like, hey, what's the purpose of this video? Like, what's it doing? Like, right? And it said it's unclear, but appears to be creative, imaginative take on possible interaction between a man and a robot, which kind of, I guess. And I was hoping it would understand that it's an advertisement, but it didn't. And then I asked, what brands are featured in this video, and it said it was ski goggles, which pretty close. They do look like ski goggles. So that was that open source project that some researchers came up with. But I thought it was interesting to show because it's multimodal, meaning like trying to combine the two forms of data. Here's another one.
So multimodal meaning it's like listening to the audio and the video.
Yeah, like people will start training on video, audio, text, and eventually you just have one model that goes between all of them. But right now we have a bunch of different really good models that do each of those separately, which people might be able to conjoin together. But the idea of going between all of them a little bit quicker might be the benefit there.
It's not a singularity.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
funny enough, now I'll get to this later, but ChatGPT 4 supposedly isn't actually one model, it's like 8 of them. And that was a difference in terms of between 3 and 4, where it was like one model, then it jumped to a bunch of models that's just kind of expertly arranged. Which I don't know how true that is, but it's something I've read about.
Well, see, that begs the question of like why Google couldn't integrate it more in with what's actually on the web today. That it runs the OpenAI software enough to give you hints on what to Google. It actually Googles it, gets that information, and then presents it as a solution and answer.
Yeah,
Because that's what I'm doing. I got 2 windows open, right? Is that quote true? Because you can't believe everything you read, although 7 out of 10 times.
Really?
Right?
You can't?
Right? But I have to go into Google to see, is this really, really true?
From your Gmail account, you will find Bard. That's what you're doing. Bard.google.com.
I think when you start Googling things and you opt into some program, and I think this might be the program. I'm not sure.
Google Labs, that's it. That's the one for.
Yeah, and I think there's a way that when you start searching on Google, it'll give you the AI generated response first at the top. Which I saw somewhere that being demoed. I just don't know how to opt into it. That's a thing. I think I've seen in like video clips of that.
I guarantee you want to sign up. They know where your Google history really went.
Yeah.
Same with me. It was like right away.
Yeah, well, this is a point that I was going to bring up later, but yeah, it's like the idea of like, what's the value of like a search engine when you've got something that might be giving you an answer better, right? How does that change things, right? How to, it's a lot there. But I'm going to talk about Invoke AI, which is an editor, open source editor. It's not easy to install. I haven't yet installed it because it takes up like 18 gigabytes of space. You have like, it's like starts with Stable Diffusion, but there's all these different versions. But basically, it's kind of like an Adobe Photoshop, but specific for AI things in general. I thought it was interesting because
Is it an offline thing?
it's open source. Oh yeah, it's an offline.
So it's.
Oh yeah. And apparently there's like there's like 200 contributors, but apparently like several companies are building their product on this shared code base.
Hmm.
Yeah, and you can start generating images with it, but I thought it was interesting, worth mentioning. I think it's interesting. I might build stuff on top of it.
50 gig.
Yeah, well, I'm running out of space on this computer, so.
They have cool things for that.
Targeted for Windows or Linux?
They're doing all of it. They're if I go to their
iPhone, then it should run in here. You say you need graphics.
yeah, I mean, yeah,
Yeah, cool.
there are hardware requirements.
Yeah. Cruise in.
Yeah, and then yeah, they've got instructions for Windows, Linux, Mac. And I'm not gonna go through any of that, but the point is, yeah, it's for everywhere, but the fact that it's open source and then there's something that's of decent, it looks like pretty decent quality of being able to have an editor, that looks pretty nice. And this one I've been interested in. I got a chance to try this out, but there's a leaderboard of open source large language models, and ChatGPT is considered a large language model. And the one that's at the top of that leaderboard for like a site that has all these things to do with AI models called Hugging Face, their leaderboard for large language models, this one's at the top. And they've got a 40 billion parameter version and a 7 billion parameter version. And the 40 billion is like 85 to 100 gigabytes worth of memory, so nobody can really run that on a practical device. And for the 7 billion parameter one, it takes about like 16 gigabytes of memory, and I'm assuming that's all GPU memory. But they have a hosted version. They have a hosted version on Hugging Face, and if you click onto this link, 7 billion parameter one, it's got it deployed over here on the side. So I was just testing it out over here instead of doing a local install. But it looks like 320,000 people downloaded this last month, so it's getting popular. But like, so I was just testing it out here, and I was asking it like, hey, do you know what Fairlife language is? Because I was drinking milk at the time, and it's like, yeah, it's milk. It's claiming to be this, and I don't even know if that's their actual slogan or not. And I said, hey, what other brands of milk would be comparable and why? And it's going through milk. It also mentioned Greek yogurt, which that kind of makes sense because it's a milk known for protein, and Greek yogurt has a lot of protein. So I think that's why it made that connection. I also asked ChatGPT, hey, can you tell me how to mail a letter? And I compared it to the response for this Falcon model. Hey, can you tell me how to mail a letter? And the response is a lot different. It's a lot shorter, not nearly as good, to be honest. But I'm also not playing around with it too much yet. And also, looking at like, hey, one's a polished product, one's a model by itself, right? And there's clearly differences in that, right? And so, is it a fair comparison? I don't know. But I thought it was still worth comparing it. And then here's actually a link to some people claiming what is actually going on under GPT-4 and claiming it's a hodgepodge of a bunch of models. And that's kind of where I read that. And that's like some guy's Substack. But I have not read that thoroughly. So that would be someone else to leave that to someone else. Here's a bunch of miscellaneous projects having to mostly to deal with large language models, trying to control them, like control the output or give them some form of agency usually. So that's the majority of the rest of this. Lane chain is one of them. Yeah, I mean, it's trying to chain prompts together, trying to give it an external data source to work with, giving it this idea of like, yeah, being an agent, make decisions, take actions, have some kind of way of giving it longer memory. Try to evaluate how it's doing. That's what LangChain tries to do. There's this project by Microsoft called Guidance. It's kind of like LangChain, kind of the same thinking. Trying to control like the output so you can turn it into a product, a useful product that doesn't go haywire. But yeah, it's a lot of the same stuff. Mostly Python. There's this project called Auto GPT, which is trying to become, trying to make something into an AI agent, right? Or just give it agency so you can give it a task and it just starts dividing that task into subtasks. And it just keeps trying to figure out how to do the thing. On the surface, that seems really great. In practice, I don't think it's that effective.
No, it sounds like a NP complete problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's not gonna get done in combinatorial thing, right?
Yeah. And so, it's
This is AI making AI.
it's just like you plug in you plug in an API key from OpenAI to call GPT 3 or 4 to then just start doing a bunch of calls to it to solve itself and run it.
Has
Yeah.
anyone done a web page where you put in one prompt and it goes to all the different engines and you pick a tab like bar, it wouldn't be a hurt to do, I'm sure.
I don't know.
It'd be interesting, you put in a prompt, put it in Bard, put it in Chat GPT, just see
Yeah.
what are the different.
We could put ads on the side.
Always with the marketing hat, this guy.
Yeah, but like you can see like when they're running this thing, right? It's just like, yeah, it's definitely not user friendly because you're running a command line. And it's just going through these tasks, coming up with plans, reasoning, criticism of why that step won't work, and somehow reasoning between those several things. Right, let's see, what are they trying to do? Next step would be to browse the GitHub repo, reasoning, plan, browse it. It's like, I need to ensure I focus, identify. And yeah, I mean, I think it ends up writing something, a summary based on a website, right? And spits it back out.
Can you get it to give you like its sources for stuff? Chat GPT,
No. No. There's not.
because they are the overlord, it is the way it is.
It's not that they don't want to let you have that. It's just that they.
Probably copyright stuff too.
It's not that they
Don't even have.
they don't have the ability to do that. As in, like, they'd have to re-engineer it, right? Whereas, like, something like Bing, like, they've incorporated that.
So that's where the
Sorry.
intellectual property lawyers going, whoa, that's my shit.
Yeah. And yeah, on the Wikipedia page about this project, it's talking about the issues related to it. It's a bunch of hallucinations, which make it go off task. Some guy,
It's like just giving a programmer something to do.
some
Next thing you know, you go, not what you wanted.
some person made a spin-off project of this called Chaos GPT, where they're trying to they've given it the goal of destroying humanity. And so it's like, it got some headlines like that
We can do
project.
that on our own.
Yeah,
Yeah, right?
yeah.
We're well on our course.
I think the missiles are more than adequate.
They talk about the limitations on the project page. It's like, this isn't a product, or it's just an experiment. May not perform well in complex real world business scenarios, right? It's something out there that people are experimenting with. Okay, this project here is by NVIDIA, and this is like a guardrails project, right? Is the idea of like keeping it bounded so it's not talking about taboo subjects, not going out of bounds of what you do or don't want it to say. I think they mentioned, they say, don't talk about politics, right? That kind of thing, right? If you want it specifically, but like, it makes sense. Like if you were trying to rein it in, so it doesn't go and do things that weren't expected. Like this is one of those projects that would help with that.
Were the sources for Chat GPT selected by people, or was it just by random blast of searches, you know.
They have like data sets of people who've scraped a bunch of large data sets.
So it
and-
was human guided.
Yeah, so people picked specific sources, then they scraped it. It's usually like pre-understood data sets that are commonly like known about and are out there. And then people train models on them. Like I think one of them is called like the pile, which because it's just like a pile of data that's from scraped on the internet.
So they
And
were
then-
able to exclude sites that were likely to have
They
questionable
they-
things
they
by not having it scrape those.
No, what I think what they did is they tacked on this other layer that was like basically a way of instructing or making it an instructional model or gives human feedback to say this is a desirable output and this isn't, and ranking those and having like a company subcontract to go through and go, yes, this was a great response. No, this was a terrible response. No, yes, this was a great response. No, this was bad based on what I asked it. And just doing that over and over again. Like that's what I think made the model good in terms of quality, is my opinion.
But
Based on
I guess
what
what I'm asking is how did they determine? I mean, all the inputs
Mhm.
came off the internet somewhere, right?
Yeah, for the most part.
So. How did they, how did they prevent it from going to Pornhub
Mhm.
or one of the wacko political sites or any of that kind of stuff? How did they keep
I think that-
those inputs out? Or did they?
They, not in all those, I don't think they got rid of all those inputs, in my opinion. I think that,
So those
I
things
think like some of that stuff may have happened gradually in terms of that data got cleaned out when those initial data sets got put together. But there are definitely like for like stable diffusion, right, where there are images that are like not like just not okay. And like it makes it biased a certain way, and all they do is they tack on a layer that filters it out on the output.
So they're doing a post filter
Ye-
instead of a pre filter.
Yeah, I think that's what's going on. I think there's some post filtering going on. That's what I think is going on to make the quality there. And also, yeah, because like for the text to image stuff, like you're literally able to toggle that on and off. So I couldn't imagine somebody manually went through and cleaned all that data for those other data sets, right? Even if it's text. And like there's also apparently like huge turnover in like the company, which was like some African company that did like the data cleaning.
I can't help but think it's really hard because it's a snapshot from like 2021, right? September.
Mhm.
So it makes me think that the reason they haven't updated is it's hard.
Yeah.
It's like, it was all they could do a big chunk of the internet.
I just wonder, what is the total combined storage of all the pages on the internet? It's way too big to fit in any one entity's computer.
Well, Google's got it all. They cache it, and they cache it. all.
Data center.
Yeah, but here's the crazy part, right? You think about something like Stable Diffusion, which is an image generator. It's like a 5-10 gigabyte file, depending on like which version of the model you're downloading. How many images could you generate from something like that? That would just fill up a phone's worth of space. And that like, so like in some way, you're almost like compressing data.
Right. That's
Or like-
condensed.
Yeah, and
But if you had to get to that condensed version by starting with everything that was out there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why it takes places like Google.
it takes months to train some of these models, like literal months, and just them running
Well,
crazy
the-
numbers of,
The storage just for the inputs is crazy.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that it'd be smaller than you would expect, though. My impression is it would be smaller than you
The
expect.
storage for all the web pages that got digested.
Yeah. Who's this guy? Let's see. Yeah. This guy, lifearchitect.ai. He's like, Yeah, he starts going into different models and what's in them. I don't know if it's transparent, it seems like for GPT-4, but I mean, this was written a while ago, but you know. I mean, he's talking about the sizes for some of these things, so you give you some sense of what this is.
Now, these are the sizes of the final model, though, right?
Data sets. I don't know. A lot smaller than you expect, that's the thing. So
What's the URL on that one? You want to put that in the chat too?
yeah, I'll put this in the Zoom chat first.
Yep.
And
I'm not on the Zoom.
I'll
then,
post it.
Put Slack.
I'll put it in Slack
That's a good idea.
in the AI channel, I guess.
Absolutely.
Um, But yeah, this is the only thing I've seen where somebody's like gone through and at least listed it and aggregated it. But yeah, it's just lifearchitect.ai, what's in my AI. And he starts to talk about the data sets in some of these. So I'd imagine that a lot of the same data sets show up because you think they're a startup, right? Even though that they got massively funded, it's still, there's constraints on how you put these things together. So, but yeah, going back to this, another guardrails application for the sake of keeping things in place. Just another one, just not by NVIDIA. This is something I came across, which is kind of out there, but there's something called quantizing AI models, which means like you're basically reducing the amount of precision and accuracy, but for conserving memory space. So the example that this guy for this project that he did is called GGML. He can get OpenAI's Whisper model, which just takes speech, turns it into text, and it does a really good job of that compared to lots of models. So something similar to that startup Otter.ai, which does like the transcription stuff.
Right.
But he's able to create this so that way you could quantize it and get it working with less memory and on CPUs on the edge. So like you could get that model running on your phone. I mean, it's not running super fast yet, but the fact that it can run on your phone locally is pretty nice. Stuff like that is kind of really interesting. The fact that, hey, you could have it running on your device and you could start having some of these models run on your device and never be hosted anywhere. Like that's really, there's some benefits there that might not be obvious at first. Like there's obviously privacy, but yeah, things like that. I thought it was just worth mentioning.
You might like that for privacy.
Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah, I mean,
else's server and say.
yeah, I mean, if you're right, if you want to make software for, let's say, like medical software, and you could say, like, I can make something more private and it never, touches a server that's not, in the hospital or something, there's benefit to that. I thought it was worth mentioning. And then, on one of my previous posts, I did put a bunch of the visual stuff when I was doing this the other time. Yeah, but those were all things like stable diffusion, control net, all those things. But if you want to go into that, I don't want to go over it again. But yeah, that's what I got for you guys.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So anyone got
Terrific.
any questions or anything else they want to talk about or anything?
What's next month?
Got Rick. I want to get Rick. Tag him in. There's
Rick's
some
coming.
there's some interesting updates like to the API for GPT 3 and 4, where you can put more data in. Like you could put like larger amounts in for it to output on and process on. So I think they usually call this like context, how much context you can put in. There's also functions, which means like you can have that API,
Emailing.
you can have the API call functions that are predefined. You know, so if you wanted to know and have context, like, hey, when you say this specific phrase to it, it's gonna go do this specific thing. There's that, and so Rick was interested in that. What else has happened? There's some other updates that happened. I think they included Bing into ChatGPT.
Are they doing anything different with it?
I don't know.
I haven't played with their flavor.
Let's see, if I go into my settings, did something new show up in here? Browse with Bing, look at that. Yeah. Browse with Bing beta. How do I use that? I don't even know. Search the internet for, I don't know, auto GPT GitHub and summarize what it is for me. Hey, look at that. It's
So is
probably
that real time? Or is that historical shit?
No, I think this is real time, then using the model to then take that data and do something with it, right? It's probably taking that text. Yeah, there we go. Did we try looking this up on this or asking what it was? There was something we asked that we weren't able to prompt engineer. So let's try that one again. So it did that. So let's do.
Hard news, as you know.
Bard seems, I've been using it here. I turned it on. Pretty good.
It's a lot more wordy.
Well, it seems very similar, actually. I think the answers are looking very similar.
I don't
That's what I
know.
mean, I like to do it side by side, for the same prompt.
Hmm.
I mean, not something that's the outpost.
I mean, it's clicking on a link. I mean, what's interesting is
Which link, do you know?
I don't know. I might be able to inspect it after.
What is it you're looking at here? This is the,
Oh, it's a Zapier link. It clicked. So like the
Ooh.
so whatever that blog post about.
huh,
Yeah. So that's interesting.
so this was the Chat GPT-4.
Yeah, I think it's also on 3 as well, because if I click on
Okay.
this, because that's 4, but if I,
Look
yeah,
for the
I
paper.
think it's only on the 4 one. Finish browsing. Well, okay.
Not done yet.
Did it?
Give me time, give me time.
Still thinking. Now you broke it.
Maybe. I don't think it's going to be able to answer it
I
because
don't-
there's probably no clear, good enough amounts of data within the one link to answer that question.
Yeah,
And so I just asked Bard to do a summary on salesbabble.com and it did it.
And it's
ChatGPT can't do that.
got real data. And real data. Current data.
That's bloody awesome.
Yeah. So there's
That's
a.
bloody awesome.
I'd be interested if you went to Bing, where they've got those model, if that could do that, right? 'Cause I don't know.
Well, Bing, they're kind of trying to merge the two.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. They
Just
they
got
checked
you
the
something.
answer it finally.
They're obscuring, what are you getting? The traditional or the new? AI, Gen 1. They weren't confusing you so much.
Okay, here's Bing.
Oh, it's citing sources.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. It's citing Wikipedia.
yeah,
It's citing
I'm gonna say,
this.
Cause that's what I just want to see. If you're using this for research and you ever want to use it, how do you quote it? Say, according to ChatGPT, so what? Where'd they get their info?
right, exactly. So,
Well, it's good. It's cited. That's cool.
Yeah, the fact that it did that is pretty cool.
Oh, Bing said, Bing couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Being native or being AI?
Bing, this is Bing on Microsoft's browser doodad. Whatever they call that thing, Edge. Yeah, this is Microsoft Bing right there. It's got a little Bing thing in there.
Interesting.
You probably can change your search engine so you can.
Comprehensive guide to becoming a prompt engineer.
And then it said search the web.
No, there it is.
But isn't this basically just automating the process of like, just like combining the process of searching the prompt and then scraping the data?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Yeah. It's,
I think to
I've,
put that extra.
at one point, I remember thinking it'd be great to
It was trying to get.
have a way to pull in any kind of data into a spreadsheet.
Huh.
And one of the thinking was you could probably do it for any any site.
I signed up
Um,
for the big one long time.
but like, there was also like you could also apply like AI stuff to this, right? Where you can clean data using some of these AI models, right? So like the idea is like, well, these things are really good. And they could like go through and do very tedious tasks of here's this column of values, format it so it's all the same, right? And it would be able to know how to do that. And so having like, it's like simple things where like, okay, when I was showing like Falcon, that open source model, like that thing could be used for like making search better, right? So you could search context of words that weren't explicitly written down and know the context of something in a video or whatever. Or you could clean data with it, so that way you could speak to it in regular language, and you could start adding a bunch of features to all these kinds of different software. Yeah, so it's just like a very useful thing, right?
Oh,
But, yeah.
personality.
Is there anything else? Trying to.
Would you guys like to see what I tried like an hour before I left for dinner?
Sure.
So I could do that, I guess.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Worth the show anyway. I don't know, maybe. So I was taking a look at, not that one, sorry. At this module here. For Drupal.org. Am I
Sure,
showing yet?
are you
Not
sure?
yet.
I don't.
I didn't share yet, sorry. Here we go.
There you go.
Now we should see it. So there's a module out there in Drupal land. For this OpenAI ChatGPT AI search capability, and it also has some ties in with the editor and a number of other little sub modules that are in there. So I was going to try this. The last meetup that we had, I was trying to just install it on the fly, and it did not work. And I'm like, what's going on? So I had a chance to take a look at after that. After that, I decided to look at the README. And the README's got information in here about the module and how to get it started. And one of the things that they are talking about here is the web server streaming support, which I did not have when I tried this. So my authentication was failing, it wasn't going, right? Makes sense. So then they proceed to give you instructions about how to do this on a local development environment with Apache. Then we get down here and it says, if your browser is Nginx based, I'm sorry, you have to figure out how to match those things with Nginx. So like, shit, I don't have time for that. So I thought, well, okay, I'm going to try this with this guy. So I just opened this up this afternoon and said, as a web systems administrator with familiarity with both Apache and Nginx configurations, how do I enable web server streaming support using Nginx? So it proceeds to give me a big long set of things, and it's great, but it's talking about installing Nginx, which I didn't have to do, obviously, because I already got that part done, and going in and configuring it. And it does talk about adding something like that to my Nginx config and then restarting Nginx and so on. So I'm like, well, that's cool. That gives me something to start with, right? So I said, how do I do this using HTTP2 server push, which it says right up here that the way, another option to do this is here. And the way that it was describing is an older version, which is going to deprecate. It's going to go away. So I thought, well, okay, so how do I do this? Assume my Nginx server is already functioning. I didn't want to get the same thing again in that front part. So then it tells me how to set this stuff up. And I'm like, well, cool. That's pretty neat. And it's pretty good instructions, I think, but I'm not sure. I'm not a sysadmin. I don't know what I'm going to do with this. And so on. It also, somewhere in one of these descriptions says something about make sure you check with your system administration people because you don't want to open up a security hole. Good suggestion, right? On one of those up above anyway. So then I took some pieces out of the README file and I said on an Apache server, we have enabled Apache FPM and use the following config. Is there a config file needed using Nginx and what would those instructions be? And then it gives me the further instructions I think will get me to where I want to go, but we'll see. I don't know. We'll find out. So that's as far as I took it. And I just thought, well, that's pretty damn neat. That's way farther than I would have ever gotten on my own, right?
In the same amount of time. right?
And this took me like half an hour
Yeah.
to get all this. And then I just gotta make sure I've got a server that I can put it on. I'm not gonna break everything and bring all my other sites down on it. Right. So that's the back.
Yeah,
So next time I will try this and I'll show you guys what we come up with.
Yeah, see if it solves your problem.
Yeah.
I
I decided it was really interesting.
remember like I had some kind of security problem with my website that like was potentially there because like there was some published known exploit for some package and the website hosting service that I use that package. And I was like, I have no idea what the security vulnerability is even saying, right? And then so I just copy and paste the whole description. So, what is this, right? Like, what is it doing, right? And then going back and forth with it over like a couple of evenings, just talking back and forth, I realized like it's a like exploit that would need so many things to line up perfectly that it was almost irrelevant. But it was like deemed like it was very critical. And then the following month, it was like removed as being published online as a thing you should worry about or something like that. And I was like, wow, okay, that's kind of interesting. The fact that, like you can basically almost look past jargon or certain ways of how people communicate within certain professions and be able to peer and understand extract meaning from it because you can start asking it to talk to you in specific ways, right? And it just gives it to you in, plain spoken language, right?
Yeah. Cool.
So
Cool. Anyway, that's my contribution for
yeah,
tonight. Kind of fun. Oh, thanks.
Good stuff.
Warm before you.
What?
yeah. Don't just hang up on all of them.
Yeah, I'm not gonna hang up on all. But I might stop my share because Daniel might want to share something else, but
Okay. Yeah, no, I think I'm good.
Are we done?
Yeah, I think I'm good.
I think we are.
Good timing on it.
All right, yeah.
This has been the best AI event I've gone to all month.
So you're coming from where we.
I mean,
All month.
Said really, or we-
This is the first one and only one, right?
there's a lot of AI.
You're always looking for that.
Cool,
Um,
cool.
where?
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop our recording now, so I will try to post that out there, by the way.